Kitty Martone, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for making some time for me. So today we're looking at you and everything you do. Last time you were on, we were looking at your work with ONAS, but today I want people to learn a bit more about you. So before I let you tell a bit of your backstory, let me just give you a bit of an intro. So not only are you, as we learned before, involved in social outreach and education with ONAS, but you are a functional nutritionist, a master herbalist, a health journalist, an author, a leader of one of the biggest Facebook groups I know, and so much more. So, Kitty, today I want to introduce you as Healthy Gut Girl. So tell us, how did Healthy Gut Girl come about? What's your origin story, as they say?
hmm Um, Waiting for this helicopter to pass. I don't know if you can hear it, but sorry. It's rattling my windows. So, okay. Um, well, it's it's a good one. We were talking about how we started, before we started recording, just about how, we whenever we listen to somebody who's selling us anything, whether it's selling us information or just giving us information or whatever, we wonder, like, does that person have any idea what I'm going through? Can they relate? And I have come so far, and people look at me and they're like, oh, you're in menopause and you're thin and you're, sleeping through the
Beautiful.
night. Thank you. And like your skin is nice and you don't know what I'm going through. And so I first want to give them this. I have always been a thin person. I have. And all my life to a fault, big problem. Undereater, hyper, adrenaline dominant, estrogen dominant, big boobs, skinny everywhere else. And, but I had severe, I think one of the things that is easy to overlook with a lot of women who are thin is you think automatically, well, they must be healthy. And that's just so far from the truth usually. I was very ill. I was born way too soon. I had spinal meningitis from right out the gate. I had pneumonia. I was hospitalized for 3 months out of my baby years. And then once I was finally out, I was always sick with something. And then when I got to my little older years, I was dealing with ear, nose, and throat stuff and gut stuff. I was chronically sick. And I always make a joke about being a professional sick person because by the time I reached puberty, everything then was compounded. Now I'm dealing with crazy hormones. And then I was one of these migraine sufferers, debilitating, blinding, needed to be in a dark room when at the onset of a migraine. Absolutely just debilitated by them. And I didn't even start my period until I was 17, almost 18 years old. And I think that had a lot to do with my body weight, with not eating enough, with being running on emergency hormones at a very young age. And then when I got to an age where I started to have what we didn't really know as autoimmune conditions then, but I started having like MACAs and POTS syndrome. And I was having the signs of all of these things, including my own level of, being in the spectrum, had really difficult time in school. Um, when I got to the age of working, I couldn't hold down jobs. The migraines would take me out. I would get a job and then get a migraine and be down for the count, and then I'd start bleeding. And then I was put on the birth control pill because they said it'll regulate your hormones. And though it did regulate my cycles, the migraines didn't go. And so I was living in New Mexico where everyone is very unhealthy at the time. I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to get out of that state. And so I ended up moving to California. A lot of details I'm leaving out. There were so many things. I met a guy, all these things. And I found the holistic world, because there's a Reiki practitioner on every corner in Los Angeles. There's a chiropractor on every corner. There's a functional doctor on every corner. There, it's just that's the world of, holistic health. And so lucky
Or
me,
was it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Lucky me, I ended up meeting my husband, who's a chiropractor, and fast forwarding to meeting him already in my 30s, late 30s, having still debilitating periods. Then he's a chiropractor and I fell in love with his world and I was like, teach me everything. And he sent me to school and that's how I became an herbalist and a nutritional counselor. But the people that he worked with a lot of children with disabilities, a lot of kids in the spectrum, a lot of cerebral palsy patients, a lot of spinal cord injuries. And so I was sort of cutting my teeth with these clients. I was learning using the information that I had just learned on these children, which was pretty much useless, like supplements and cleanses and, the holistic world of nutrition. Like it's not useful for a child who's got three things on their diet or maybe they have a G tube. And so I had to shift, I had to pivot and I had to figure out how to help these kids. In the meantime, I was healing my gut. I was feeling so much better, but I couldn't I was getting pregnant and then I was miscarrying over and over and over. And after the first miscarriage, my hormones dominated my life, my symptoms. I had catamenial epilepsy, epileptic seizures. I was hemorrhaging. I was bleeding for months at a time. When I did get pregnant, I was miscarrying at week 5 or 6. It was horrible. It was taking a toll on my marriage. It was a nightmare. And all the doctors that I saw, and I'm in California. I'm in Los Angeles. I have some of the best gynecologists in the world, supposedly there wanting to put me on the pill, wanting to put me on, give me a hysterectomy, ablations, you name it, everything they were throwing at me. And I just knew, especially now that I had this new awareness of holistic health and stimulating your natural healing process through chiropractic and all these other things, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do any of these things, but what am I going to do? So, anyway, I fell down the rabbit hole of progesterone. Thank God I found progesterone, bioidentical progesterone. And at the same time, I was also doing the body ecology diet. I was working for Donna Gates, the author of the body ecology diet, which is a lot like the GAPS diet, the gut and psychology syndrome diet. And so now I'm having like conflicting information a little bit. I started to feel like the diet that I was doing was not serving me so well, even though it was helping these children and I was seeing changes in people's lives. I kind of maxed out. I'm like, something is wrong. So the progesterone, I started the Facebook group and I was shocked. That group grew. Within a couple of months, we had 5,000 people. It was like so many women were suffering and needed answers. And kind of the rest is history. That's when I started to find the pro-metabolic world and I started to learn about Dr. Ray Peat and that's it. So, and since then, I didn't unfortunately ever carry a child full term, never had babies. And I think it's a timing issue. I think it was by the time I learned these amazing things, I was already beyond the point of, being able to have a child naturally. And so it was bittersweet. So, I'm helping all these women get pregnant, but yet, I didn't have my own children. But it really is a blessing. And I'm one of these people who knows that, God had a plan. So
Yeah.
I'm not suffering from it. But that's my story.
Well, he does have a plan as much as when we're in the darkness, we don't believe there's a plan. Why am I suffering so much? But like, I think we mentioned this in our last conversation. I say it all the time, like with practitioners, our mess becomes our message, which is what you're alluding to and what I mentioned in the beginning. Like I started being extremely overweight. That then became my message. And it really is the case for most practitioners because I
Hmm.
suppose that's how we get started on our path. But something you said there was really interesting. You had a really traumatic start to life. You were in the hospital for 3 months, and then you mentioned adrenaline dominance. When I was a toddler, I got scalded, third degree burns. I pulled a hot cup of tea down on myself. And in Ireland, tea, big thing. So it was scalding hot. I don't know what terminology you use in America or Canada for scalding. Like it was very, very hot.
Yeah,
And
scalding.
it was, I still have scars here and here. They've kind of faded as I've gotten older. But I was in the hospital for 6 months. I obviously don't remember it because I was so young. I think I was like one. They weren't sure if I was going to make it or not. That just to kind of highlight how serious it was. I don't
Wow.
remember it, but I definitely have adrenaline dominance. And I wonder if that was my trigger, if that was what attached to my central nervous system and then pushed me into that more adrenaline state, like you,
Hmm.
because our start to life was somewhat traumatic and scary.
Yeah, I mean, Irene Lyon talks about this kind of thing all the time. She's the Feldenkrais teacher who I always promote as a somatic healing coach in my group. And it's almost like we add so we have that traumatic experience, and it tells us the world isn't safe. And so you automatically, your nervous system relies on this fight or flight, like sensorial, where's the danger, where's the danger, where's the danger. No matter how much your parents might try to make that okay for you, that is there. That's going to be there. But then we add, things. It's cumulative, right? Other things add to it. So maybe a few months later, you're at a playground with a sibling or friends or whatever, and you're being watched, and maybe something happens there. And the other children who didn't have that scary moment in their lives when they started out, they're like, okay, that was scary. I don't know what happens. Maybe a car crashes and all the kids get terrified and everyone's screaming and crying. But you already have that awareness. And so now you're adding on things to that. You're accumulating more reasons not to be safe. And on a very rudimentary level, like not on a rational level, you're too young, right? So this is all going into this sort of bank that's telling you life's not safe. Make sure you're constantly aware that things hurt, things burn. And even if your mom is there, they'll still hurt. So you're registering all this into your nervous system. So absolutely. I mean, I, started off my life in what they called a coop tent, which is something like an incubator where, they had me in a cloth diaper with sandbags on my arms and on my legs, so that I wouldn't fuss and pull out IVs and scratch myself in with cool air to keep my fever down with nobody there. In those days, I mean, I'm 55, so this is 1969. There's nobody there. They have the nurses come in and put their hands inside the coop tent with rubber gloves on. You're not being held. So, my whole world started off with this somatic message of you're alone. No one will come when you're frightened. Those messages. And so, yeah, it can set off your adrenaline dominance, which can then set off, poor immune system function, gut, leaky gut. Yeah, it's a domino that falls and just leads to a number of other. Now, can you heal from that? I mean, of course, look at us. But it's so nice to have an awareness, or if your parents have an awareness at a young age, like now so many people are knowledgeable about these things. And so they know how to support a child who has that in their awareness and to heal from it.
But then the question begs, can you 100% heal from it? Or is that always an underlying trait of you and your personality, like for the rest of your life?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I know that, like you just said, your mess becomes your message. Um, I'm a person who it totally informed my personality. So you say I was this nature or nurture. So we already have a certain type of personality based on our parents and our upbringing and all of those things. But also, like, I have this ferocious, insatiable desire for fairness. So I'm constantly wanting to protect the innocent, constantly wanting to fight for truth. If I see something unfair, I don't care if it's just someone I don't know crossing the street and something happens. I'm like, I go on alert. I really do. And I've worked on this stuff a lot. But that begs the question, don't we need these people? Don't we need people who fight for fairness and truth? Didn't that inform my life? That what I went through as a child informed me and made up who I am now. So in my group, for example, I'm like, I'm fighting for fairness all the time. I want people to have the truth, and I want to fight for the truth. I mean, through COVID, I was standing up and speaking out, and it's a burden on your nervous system to do that. But it's also like we need those people, right?
Why do you think that's so interesting? Why do you think you have this yearning for fairness? Why? I'm curious here.
So one of the things about abandonment is you just don't feel like that was fair. Like there's this very base thing about, watching an infant who knows nothing, who should be at the warm breast of her mother, and she's in this cold tent, has no idea no clue, nothing, no awareness at all. And she's terrified, and she's being poked and prodded and given formula, and it's a sad story. And so it's like, that's just not fair. That's not fair. And so then life became like that for me, watching other people, watching innocent animals, and like, it's not fair. I can't bear it. I can't bear to watch it. And when I have to watch it, when I have to experience it in my life, I'll put my own life at risk to make sure that it's fair, that that child or that innocent person gets a fair shot. And yeah, so I think it's just ingrained. It's like a reaction to that's just not fair.
Yeah, you want to protect others. You don't want others to feel that isolation, loneliness, pain, and all. That's really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned gut, and that's why you're here. So you are the expert in gut health, in my opinion. How did gut health tie in with everything you've already said? How did Healthy Gut Girl evolve? Like, what brought you down looking at the path of the gut?
Hmm. I think that it wasn't originally the gut. It was originally just like my husband's concept of global health, like everything's connected. But then when I started working with these children and I started to do some research on how can I help these kids if I can't change their diet, if we can't do cleanses, if we can't do any of the stuff for, a typical person, and then I stumbled upon Donna Gates. And Donna Gates, all her work is the body ecology diet is geared towards remediation of the gut. So when I studied that, I was like, and then I really fell down this whole thing with the microbiome and how the microbiome. Do you know about the book series Anastasia? I
No, but
can't
I
remember
think
the
I've
whole
heard
name.
you mention it before in one of your other podcasts.
That was probably one of the, and I don't know why I never remember the name. That was probably the moment where I went, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I'll spare you all the details except to say that, the concept of the microbiome and all of the microbes, and that we're more microbe than we are bacteria and human cell, and that we are governed, like not one metabolic function in the body happens without a microbe deciding that it does, or multiple microbes coming into, cohesion to make things happen in your body. So you can't really function without your microbiome. And so that blew my mind. That opened my whole world up, where I was like, "Oh my goodness, everything comes down to the gut and how healthy and diverse our microbiome is." And that was just a moment. That was literally a moment where I went, "Oh my God, this is crazy." I felt like I was high. I was like I was seeing, like I was an ayahuasca or something. I was like, I just saw the universe. I saw what God's plan
It all
is.
makes sense now.
It all makes sense. And it really just came down. And then I ended up reading a whole bunch of books on the microbiome. And And it was tremendous. And I was like, well, this is it. This is what my focus is. Then I'm going to help these children by, helping to remediate their guts through getting some kind of fermented food into their bodies, and which was its own feat, but we did it and we saw so many things, so many miracles. Um, so that was an incredible time. And I did that for many years. And then, like I said, I was like, oh, my gut's better. I'm doing, my health is better. But there were still a few things that were lingering. And I was like, what am I missing here?
And
So,
that's where
yeah,
the hormones came in.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Children, a joy and a challenge at the same time, especially
Hmm.
if they are not willing to try anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm actually going to do a course. It's not my next course, but it's the course after, just, building resilient children, because ultimately that's the goal. Kiran Krishna on the microbiome, Kiran, he just made this amazing statement in this class he did recently where he said, the goal ultimately is to build resiliency. We don't want to just be able to manage our histamine, be able to manage our estrogen dominance, be able to manage our diabetes. We want to be able to eat what we eat, be in contact, exposed to pathogens and viruses. And we want to be able to, get hurt, because you're going to get hurt in life, whether you break a bone or you break your heart. You're going to be exposed to a lot of life, and you want to be as resilient as possible. So you don't want to avoid breaking your heart and avoid COVID and avoid these things. You want to say, okay, I don't want those things to happen, but I'm ready.
Yeah, come
And
at me.
so,
I can handle
yeah, come at me. Well, yeah, come at me. And so, so resiliency is really the key. And of course, resiliency begins in the gut. It begins with a diverse microbiome with lots of different microbes in there. Um, so that when you're exposed to lots of different microbes, your gut's not like, whoa, what's that? It's like, yeah, I know that. I've seen that. I've done that, and it's strong, it's resilient. And someone's brought this up in the group the other day. They were saying they were on keto and they said, I did so well on keto. I did amazing. I lost all this weight. On and on, is the least problems I ever had in my life. And I love it. Why don't you guys like talking about it in this group? And I was like, well, let me just ask you a question. What brings you to the group? And they're like, well, I'm not sleeping through the night and I have this and I have that. I'm like, okay, so keto helped you in some ways, but not in other ways. And I said, you don't want to have to go to a birthday party, a kid's birthday party, and avoid the chocolate cake. You don't want to have to forever and ever only eat carnivore. You want to be able to have a diverse diet and be able to expose to things that maybe aren't the best things, some seed oils, and all of a sudden you're not taken down because you had
Yeah,
fried chicken,
yeah.
So that's the goal, I think. And it starts with the resilient gut.
The couple of things here. The idea around keto carnivore, I'm not completely against it because some people do feel better on it, but I think it's unrealistic for a small time frame to relieve some symptoms. Okay, great, but we still need to address the underlying issue. And in my experience, most people who go gung ho on these eating protocols, then they have a random cupcake or a beer, and the body, for lack of a better word, just blows up. Everything goes to
Yeah.
hell. Rashes, diarrhea. It's a fool's errand, as they say. You're taking
Hmm.
out the problems, but you're not fixing the problems.
Yeah.
Um, we currently have a measles outbreak in Calgary and across Canada now, and a lot of talk. Apparently, it's the anti-vaxxers' fault again, and all this
Of
blah
course it is, because we're
blah.
not vaxxed and we believe in herd immunity. So let's have a measles party.
You think, oh, everyone has learned. We all know now it's not the vaccine that's the cure, and then something like this crops up, and you're like, Well, I guess we didn't learn. I guess people didn't learn. Like it just, so I just walk away on to the next.
Yeah,
I'm not getting involved in that. Like if you don't realize at this stage what's
at
going
this
on,
stage.
nobody can
Yeah,
help you, whatever. And as for resiliency, well, I'm not vaccinated on many things. I did get vaccinated as a kid because my parents were in control then.
hmm,
I barely get taken down. That resiliency aspect, like rarely get taken down. You can come at me and I'll probably okay. I have a lot of resilience, which makes me think as you were speaking, I contribute a lot of my resiliency to my experiences over life as well, making me resilient. And I wonder again if it started with that traumatic event. I had
sure.
to learn to be hard and take care of myself and be ready for whatever did come at me. It's all
Hmm.
very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're resilient too. Like you are
I
resilient.
am. I think, without making it sound to maybe people who feel defeated by this, by life and by health stuff, I'm not perfect, I'm not compared to how I was, definitely much better.
Hmm.
But when I don't eat, because I still have a habit of under eating, and then I'll slip into the adrenaline dominant role really easily. I'm supposed to go to a dance class tonight, and I know it's an intense dance class, and
Okay.
I love it. I love doing stuff like that. But I also know that it's a fine line. Like if I get too into it, and then I'll get taken down for 10 days if I overdo it. And when I get, and I may not even realize that. I might go to the class and I might like have a great time, and then maybe there's a moment or two where I'm like, ooh, my heart's racing really fast or whatever. And then it's the next day. I'm like, oh my gosh, a soreness. And then I wake up and I don't have an appetite, and I can tell my temperature drops. And then I'm like, okay, now I start getting a little depressed, and then all of a sudden I feel like I need a cocktail,
Or
and then
two.
all of a sudden I wake up and I've got the eczema on my foot that had been healed for a month is back. And you don't put it all together because it happens subtly. And you're like, there's no way it was the dance class. That's silly. But it is the dance class, or it is the fact that I, had a really stressful day and maybe had an encounter with someone in the group that really upset me, or, and you don't realize. So, well, for me, so I am resilient compared to how I was, but I'm definitely not perfect. I'm happy because I'm not on hormones right now and I'm in menopause. But I'm not afraid if I have to feel like, oh, wow, I think I need to start taking them again. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, I failed, Like so it's resiliency for me, for what I'm used to and what I know. Yeah, I think I'm resilient.
I see some of the comments in that group and I see your responses, and I'm like, oh, she responded very well. That's very professional. You kept a level head and kept it all like above board. Whereas the comments would cause anyone to snap or retaliate. Like some of the women, I understand they're already frustrated, but you don't need to take your frustration out on me. I'm just trying to help you. But
Yeah.
I do.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed. It's a phenomenon to me. And I try not to be like, oh, I would never do that. Cause I'm sure at some point in my life, like if there would have been Facebook when I was in my 20s, oh my God, hold me. Oh my God. Like I would be so embarrassed of myself. Cause I just had no filter back then. But, what's amazing to me is the phenomenon of getting upset by a post. Like you see a post and it's something you disagree with completely, and then the desire to hop in there and like get mad about it. It's one thing to go in and say, I don't understand this. This seems opposite of this group. Can you share with me? And a lot of people say that. But some people come in and they're like, what is this insanity? What's wrong with you? And they go off. And I'm like, what is that? Like,
Why
you
are you
think you're going to,
here as well?
why are you going to do you think you're going to have any benefit from that? You know? Now, if it's a post on X or something, that's a sewer. Like you go in there, everybody just goes in there to blow off steam. But like in a private group where there's only like five or six moderators and we're all cultivating this 10-year-old group and you come into this community and you're like, "Meh." I just don't, yeah, I don't get it. I guess it's a phenomenon today. Everyone wants to be heard. Their opinion matters.
Well, people easily get triggered nowadays. And I think after COVID, your opinion doesn't matter. There's one way or there's the highway. And if you, like the anti-vaxxers, if you don't have the same opinion, then you're not one of us kind of thing, or you're
Yeah,
crazy. So, but what you said there
true.
about the stress knocking you out for days, let's just
Hmm.
go back to that for a minute because that's something I am constantly saying, and I not that I want you to reinforce what I'm saying, convince my people that I'm correct. Is one thing I always say is stress, if anything's going to destroy your motivation, your get up and go, even your immune system, back to your eczema, it's going to be stress. But people still don't realize that. Like it literally crushes your white blood cells.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many different ways to talk about stress. There's, so many stressors. So there's not just the emotional stress, but there's, physical stressors, environmental stressors, there's infection. But when talking about like adrenaline, talking about like the stress I was talking about with working out or whatever, those are the ones we don't think about. It's obvious if you get in a car accident, it's obvious when you get in a fight with your spouse or when your bank account is low. Those are obvious. You're like, I'm under so much stress. But it's the other things that I feel like we don't recognize as stress. Working out too hard. And that can be a fine line, especially for women in perimenopause and menopause. Like it can be a fine line. Stuff you used to do, all of a sudden is just not what you can do. And you can't understand why you're having panic attacks all of a sudden, or you're having this anxiety that you've never had before. I had a client recently who was a professional weightlifter. I've had so many professional weightlifters, which I love, but this one woman was like, I've been fit all my life. I was in competition sports. Um, and she said, and now I don't know what's wrong. I'm gaining weight and I'm having all this adrenaline and anxiety. And I said, well, what have you changed about your workout since you entered perimenopause? She's like, I'm not even sure I'm in perimenopause. And I'm like, eh. And then, um, and then she's like, nothing. I've been doing the same workout. She's like, since I was in my, late 30s. I was like, well, that could be the problem. So she wasn't seeing it as stress. She in fact, she looks at working out as a decompression and getting that high from, getting in the zone because you're doing CrossFit or whatever. And she felt so good from it. And it's like it comes a certain time where that becomes a stressor. And so, recognizing the stress is important, recognizing that you're going through it.
That can be really hard for someone of
Very.
that degree to hear that I can't do this anymore. Like
Yeah.
that's a punch to the gut right there. But
Yeah.
even I'm sure you've heard it as well, like so many of the moms that I work with, they're like, but I love going to spin or I love going to this. It's my me time. It's the only time I get away from my kids. And my heart goes out to them because I'm like, I know it's your time, but maybe it's not the best. Maybe we can balance it a little bit better. And
Yeah. Like this, like like I said, I love dancing and you can find classes where you can do things that you can exert yourself, but that you can moderate how hard you go. And that might be hard for someone who's used to going hard because they're like, I'm not going as hard as I was, but they're still going hard. So, checking your pulse and temp, especially your pulse, how long does it take for you to normalize? Are you able to fall asleep that night easily? Stuff like that,
the scale, heart rate variable is a big one for nighttime, but the scale is another one with my clients that oh, I was so good all week. I did everything correct. I don't know why the scale is up 2 pound. And I'm like, well, what did you do on Thursday and Friday that was stressful? Oh, well, I did a spin class on Thursday and I did hot yoga on Friday. And I'm like, well, your body is crying. It's inflamed. It's stressed because you're not just doing that. You're doing a full-time job. You're doing kids. You're bringing kids to events, hockey,
Yeah.
dinner, cleaning the house. Like, but we as women, we don't see that, and we think, but this is the only time I get to myself.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the other end of the spectrum. I just wanted to bring that up where there's a lot of women who, maybe don't work out and they are at home and they are screen time, TV time, and they're stagnant. And then they're like, well, I'm not stressed though. I'm just chilling. In fact, I'm really calm. Why am I still having anxiety? But even a stagnant lifestyle is stressful. Our bodies were not designed to be stagnant. So stagnation, not getting, plenty of fresh air, sunshine, social exchanges, not being able to go outside and be in the fresh air, those things, when you don't do those things, they are stress. It's stress. It's perceived as stress to the body to not be able to go out and, live how we were designed to live. That is perceived as stress.
And then there's the blue light exposure, and then if you're having some wine in the evening,
Yeah.
and then the stagnation that you mentioned, I'm sure, not I'm sure, I know you're well aware of this. Serotonin's going to increase, and we've been led to believe high serotonin is a great thing, but it's not necessarily. So just
Yeah.
because your mind thinks you're not stressed does not mean your body is not stressed.
Right, right. And there's a depression level to it, there's a depression level to stagnation. There's a biochemical aspect to stagnation. So you literally have the lack of lymph drainage, the lack of lymph flow. You have stagnation at the liver because you are sedentary. You've got stagnation at the gut. So you have slow motility or very loose motility, which is just another form of constipation, really. And so, your thyroid is slow, everything is slow. And that creates an energy of depression, of low energy, poor outlook, poor perspective on things. And I just did this couples hormone reset course with Jake Miner, and it was intense. I even got emotional through the course. We had like this Friday is our last day. And I was like, man, this is so true. Just thinking about how hormones inform how you look at life, how you feel about life, your outlook on the world. And, just imagine like I kept using this example of seeing a sunset, right? Maybe you go with your partner, your spouse, your kids are alone, and you see this beautiful sunset and your body's calm. Maybe you had some wine or just a nice dinner and you're just looking at the sunset and you just feel the majesty of God, and it's just beautiful. And then like 2 days later, it's Monday and it's the evening and you're driving home from work and you're like, that damn sunset is like blinding me,
I fucking
or
see.
whatever. It's just perception, it's perception. And hormones inform perception. Hormones are how you feel about everything. Everything, neurotransmitters, hormones, that's how you feel about life. And so if you are not producing adequate hormone levels, you don't have a robust metabolism and you're not making hormones, yeah, it's going to suck sitting around and being stagnant. And you're going to have a perception of life that's not going to be nice. Things that might not bother you are going to start to bother you. Things that don't induce panic are going to start inducing panic because you just are running on your backup hormones, your emergency hormones. And so the correlation was in this couples hormone reset was how that can have an impact on your marriage or on your relationships. And how you think it's your partner. You think, oh, here he goes again. Oh, he's doing that thing again. Oh, he's blaming me again. And the resentment builds over the years. And you don't really take a moment and say, could this be a biochemical? Like, okay, let's say that all those things are true. You still have to deal with that foundational base, that the bottom of that pyramid, which is going to be your metabolism and hormone production. And so it's going to make it so much easier if you address those fundamental biological things that need to be addressed and supported and worked on. You're going to be able to have healthier relationships because of it.
Yeah, indeed. And that's partially why a lot of our colleagues have spoke about why divorce rates are so high during perimenopause and menopause, and usually initiated by the women. Enough said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was funny teaching that course for me because because I'm in menopause. My husband's going to be 50, so I'm older than he is. And yeah, I'm like, I'm teaching this course, yet I'm going through my own stuff. But I don't think you need to be, a perfect person to deliver a message and to teach people. You can be at the other side of the bridge and say, look, when you cross this bridge, make sure you hold on to the rail, make sure you wear the right shoes, make sure you, because I didn't do any of that. And yes, I'm on this side, but you should do those things. You're warning people. And so, yeah, I mean, hormones from like I said about my life and my, infertility issues, like our marriage went through the gauntlet because I had this perception of life, and I was like having miscarriages and all the things and what that does to your relationship. It's intense and, it's life. You got to figure out how to navigate through it with grace and give yourself grace, give your partner grace and patience and keep searching for the answers, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
So
So,
much.
Kitty, I wanted to ask you, and since as we're into the hormones now and gut health was your thing, now hormones are your thing. How does gut health affect your hormones in regards to the estrogen dominance? How does stress affect that? Of course, the metabolization and detoxification of hormones.
Hmm. Well, I know I am hormone focused, hormone centric, but you can't have healthy hormones without the gut. You cannot address hormones without the gut. You can't. And people who are trying to take DIM and take, CDG and all of these different detox support and who are on bioidenticals and on any kind of support in that way and are not doing anything for their gut, it's you might as well not be doing anything. Maybe you're seeing some benefit, but you can't. And it's because the most important component to understanding hormones is not just the production of hormones, but it's the conjugation and which is the breaking down of the hormones and the elimination or recycling, if needed, of hormones. That is just as important as making them, is what you're doing with them. And the gut is the phase, there's three phases of detox: phase one, phase two, and phase three. Two of them are at the liver, the third one is at the gut. If the gut's not open, phase two and phase one and two doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you're doing. In fact, it can even make it worse to support with something like DIM and CDG and upregulate phase one and phase two when phase three is closed down. And phase three is you'll recycle hormones right back into the system. And I shouldn't say hormones, I should say estrogen. When you recycle estrogen and it's not needed, because the recycling process is important, we need it. If you don't, if you're phase three is not supported well and you recycle that estrogen and you don't need it, it is so much more potent than it was the first go around. So it goes back into the system, and that's the one that collects in tissues. That's the one that causes clotting and fibro. It grows things. It's far more potent. And so you can't do one without the other. The other thing is a lot of hormones have a cycle that includes the gut, like cortisol. So it starts in the adrenals and then it has this life cycle that ends in the gut. And then you have microbes in there, kind of like the estrobolome for estrogen. It's a different set of microbes that help you to metabolize that cortisol and recycle it and clear it. And if you don't do that, that cortisol is very, I don't want to say caustic. It will degrade the lining of the gut, and it can on its own create leaky gut. So this is why stress, constant stress, constant fight or flight, constant stressors on the body and not dealing with that will create a leaky gut. So you can't really talk about hormones without talking about the gut. You can't. Like it's just not possible. So that's one of my big things. That's my next course, which is registration is going to open on Friday, called Detox Essentials. And people think we get this question multiple times a day. So because I'll say, you have to support a stagnant liver, make sure you bring a lot of support to the gut when we're dealing with estrogen dominance. And people will say, how do I do that? How do I support my gut? I mean, my liver. How do I support my liver detox? And everyone wants a liver cleanse. Which liver cleanse should I do? Should I do the medical medium? Should I do all of Andreas Moritz flush? Like everyone wants to do some kind of flush because they're sexy, right? It's
Oh,
like I'm
there's a
gonna just
quick fix as
purge.
well.
Yeah. And so, but it's like we have to first learn how to support the natural. We have our detox organs, which do it every day, all day. We need to support that first and make sure that that third phase three is open. And then we can start talking about the rest of, detoxification and when it's appropriate to do a cleanse, a flush, anything like that. So, or a supplement protocol. And it's important. It's super important. And it goes along with digestion. The gut, liver detox and the gut, it's all part of the same as my mentor used to say, it's the power chain. That's what it's called. And I think it's traditional Chinese medicine term, but it's basically like, the digestion, the liver includes the liver, and that includes the bowel. So it's all part of the same system.
Yeah, most people do not even consider the liver or the gallbladder being part of digestion. But they really
Right.
are. I think I told you before, maybe I didn't. I have a client, her bowel movements are a lot better now, but she went one stage 8 weeks without a bowel movement. I remember telling Georgie this, and she went to the doctor and they just prescribed her a laxative, and her systemic inflammation just through the roof, like insane, because she was recirculating the endotoxins and the estrogen. And now, I don't want to say years later, maybe 2 years later, now she just got a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, which would make sense,
Sure.
and fibromyalgia, and her pain is like off the chart. And even though her bowel movements are better now, I
Hmm.
mean, it's going to take a long time to undo all the damage that having all that waste sitting there and putrefying and then recirculating in your system to be undone.
Yeah. I mean, she's lucky to be alive. 8 weeks is amazing, It's very toxifying. And so, I mean, I'm worried for people when they don't go when they're like, oh, I go once a week,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
8 weeks, I can't imagine how she made it through life that way.
or how uncomfortable it was as
Yeah.
well. Like you just feeling completely backed up. But this has been an issue with her for a long time, which then would go back to thyroid function and why is your digestion so bad? Is it because
Yeah.
of the thyroid? And a lot of people seem to forget that your thyroid influences not just your hormones, but also the gut, bowel transit time as well,
Hmm.
and vice versa. Like estrogen, as I'm sure you'll agree, is very, especially when it's in high levels, can be quite damaging to the thyroid.
Yeah, if it's well, like a pregnant woman or a healthy pregnant woman or a 22-year-old woman, 18-year-old woman, they have really high levels of estrogen. But they also have high levels of progesterone. So we know it's not the high levels that are the problem. We know it's the unopposed estrogen that's the problem. And then it's the toxic estrogen. So, I think something that a lot of experts and doctors are not talking about is that xenoestrogen load because, someone can look at their blood labs or even look at their their urine labs, and things can look really normal and they can have high levels of both estrogen and progesterone and have horrible symptoms. And doctors will say, or practitioners will say, but look at your estrogen. Yeah, the ratio looks fine, but your estrogen's really high. It's like, I don't know that that's the problem. I think it's probably an unseen load, an unseen xenoestrogen load, or a tissue load of estrogen that is being overlooked here
Mhm.
because I don't think it's, I know the peak community and I get a little bit of flack about this because they're just all about lowering estrogen. I just don't think that that's wise at all. I
Yeah.
think it's, we should have adequate levels of estrogen, but it just needs to be opposed by progesterone. And if you have high xenoestrogens, what's that progesterone doing? Is it, nobody knows. There's no expert that can tell you, oh, well, the progesterone's trying to oppose that too. We don't know that. How do you even test for that? And so we don't know what the xenoestrogens are doing except for creating inflammation and acting like estrogen. So it's just very overlooked component there. And so with this woman who you're talking about with the bowel movements and constipation, she's not just recycling endotoxin, she's not just recycling estrogen, she's not eliminating any of the toxins she comes in contact with, because they're not going through the process and she's not releasing. So she's got xenoestrogens, chemicals, glyphosate, pollution, all of it that's just stuck. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the length of time is, like a record length of time for someone to not have a bowel movement, but
She's right
eight
up
weeks
there. Well,
is
yeah.
he's pushing
Yeah.
it.
What did
Yeah.
Georgie say? He said, that's an emergency scenario. She should have been brought to hospital or something like that.
Yeah.
His
Absolutely. I
Romanian
agree.
accent. But
Yeah.
this is as much as diarrhea is equally undesirable. I do say to my clients, if you had to choose between diarrhea and constipation, I would go with diarrhea every time because at least then you're getting stuff out. It's not just
Hmm.
sitting there putrefying and causing issues. Either neither are desirable, but diarrhea,
Yeah.
if I had to choose, as uncomfortable as it is, at least you're flushing. At least
Yeah.
whatever your body's trying to get rid of, you are getting it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, you know, this is the thing with like people having like magnesium citrate and forcing a bowel movement through magnesium, and then they get this like watery stool, and better out than in for sure. But I also think that it is a form of like when you have impaction or your body's having a real difficult time passing stool or even just eliminating toxicity and then passing stool, you and then you get really wet PC stools. That is really a form of constipation because your body, I think, is flooding the bowel with water to get that out. And not in a very successful way. It's like you said, better out than in. But it is definitely, I think, a form of constipation. The people that I have worked with that have this problem, I'm concerned for them too. I'm like, you know what? Not only is this dehydrating, but for some reason, you have this slow motility. And yeah, thyroid for sure, but also microbiome is, you've got some dysbiosis that needs addressing, not enough fiber or the right kind of fiber or even too much fiber.
Or
So
too
it's
much
a,
fat.
Mhm.
Mhm. There's definitely
Oh,
still an issue there that needs to be addressed.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Kitty, thank you. Is your new course out yet? The detox.
Registration should be up on Friday. If not, then very, very soon, Saturday, Monday. But it's you can go to healthygutgirl.com and just click on HGG Vault. So it's a Healthy Gut Girl
Right.
Vault, and
Mhm.
that's where all the courses live. And this one's called Detox Essentials. And the cool thing about this one is there's a 2-day mini course. It's only 25 bucks. And then there's the advanced course, which is going to be a lot more in depth. We talk about, genetic variants and phase one, two, and three, and estrogen conjugation, all of it. And the first one is really foundational stuff that everyone, including the advanced, will take as well.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Will you be notifying people on Instagram, like Instagram stories? Hey, it's up.
all of it. Yeah, Instagram, newsletters, the group, the estrogen dominance support group, and all the social outlets for sure.
I'll be sure to take it because even I think just because we are teachers or we think we know everything doesn't mean we wouldn't benefit from stuff like this or a refresher. You obviously know stuff I don't know, and I'm sure it's vice versa as well. So
Yeah,
stuff like this is
absolutely.
not just for the average person or our clients, it's for everyone. Like you should always be learning to understand your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And
agree.
your Instagram page is
It's now Healthy Gut Girl official.
what did some I think I did see someone else stole your name.
It was like Healthy Gut Girl. Someone had Healthy Gut Girl before I did, or right at the same time, and so some girl has Healthy Gut Girl. So I have always been Healthy Gut Girl underscore, which has been very unfortunate. And then now I just changed it to Healthy Gut Girl official.
Well, well, she's the faker now. You're the real
She's the
deal.
imposter.
Yeah. Well, Kitty, thank you for your time and your not your vast amount of knowledge, because I really appreciate it. I love that. But for your openness, like how you tell your story, your experiences, your considerations when you speak, it's different to how other people speak. And it's more not only genuine, but I think aligned with people listening, which is why your group is so successful.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you for that feedback.
Well, I'll chat to you soon, of course, because I'm always annoying you on Instagram.
I love it.
But
Annoy
thanks for
away.
your time, Kitty. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye.